Dr. Elam.
Yes,
Okay, great. Okay, well, let me go ahead and officially call the meeting to order here. It's 10:03 a.m. Welcome our guest here, and I'll ask Dr. Elam here in a second to state her location for the record. We do have established quorum. I'd also like to recognize the fact that this is our first meeting that we have both of our student representatives here. Congratulations again to Omar and Shelby. What an exciting day for the Department of Education and the board, which was established in 1982. It just took us 37 years to figure out we needed a student voice. So we're glad that both of you are here and certainly look forward to your input. Don't be shy. I don't think either one of you are. Do I need to just ask Dr. Elam to state? Dr. Elam, if you can state your location for the record.
Okay. I'm Elderberry Road in Beach Mountain, North Carolina.
Okay. A couple of other reminders: if you have a cell phone, including me, so please silence it. And this meeting is being live streamed, and I just would remind everybody when you talk just to kind of get into your microphone there a little bit so that we can make sure it's recorded. I will do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Ms. Altman to lead us in the invocation. Rise and join with me as I say the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Join me in prayer, please. Our Father, we thank you for another day. We thank you for the blessings that we enjoy. We thank you for the grace and mercy that you show us each day. We thank you for the fact that we're here today. We pray that you'll be with those that are absent as they travel. We pray for traveling mercies and safety for them. It's exciting to start another school year, and Lord, we just pray for each person that's involved in teaching our children every day from when they leave home to when they return. And we just ask that you be with them, you provide a hedge of safety around our schools, that you protect them from any harm. We pray that this will be a successful school year for all those out there. It's exciting to have a new beginning, and we pray that they will take that and work with it, and that we'll see success in each district. Be with those today, Lord, that are protecting us around the world. We just pray for their safety, for their safe return homes. We pray for our nation. Be with those who are leading our nation. We just ask that you give them wisdom and give them strength and give them courage to do the things that move our nation in the right direction. Go with us now as we make these decisions. Thank you for those who work here every day to try to better our state and our school districts. In thy name we pray. Amen.
I don't know about the rest of y'all, but there are 3 Dean children who started school last Wednesday, and we're very thankful. God bless them that they're back in school. It's been a long summer. I need an approval of the minutes from the July 18th board meeting, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, you have your agenda here, hopefully everyone, on your board book. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? If so, I'll entertain a motion to do so now. Hearing none. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull out for discussion? If so, I'll entertain a motion to do so now. Seeing none, then we need to have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So move.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. With that, we'll turn it over to the recognition ceremony. I'm sorry, Dr. Elam, if you can just make sure to audibly, if you're on mute when there's a vote, just make sure that we hear it to record it, please.
Okay.
Good morning, Dr. Dean, Dr. Wright, and board members. It is now my honor to present to you this month's board recognitions. Today we honor MDE employees for the month of July and August. Our MDE employee for the month of July is Ida Cannon, School Attendance Officer for Sunflower County. Ida, please join Dr. Dean and Dr. Wright at the front of the room. Teamwork is essential to meeting the needs of school districts, and Ida is always willing to help coworkers, teachers, administrative staff, and students to ensure a positive outcome. She maintains daily contact with Sunflower County School District personnel and parents to ensure students are in school. She is ready to tackle any task and assist where needed. She is creative, soft-spoken, yet a quick thinker and handles setbacks well as she keeps moving forward to improve the outcome. Ida, thank you for representing MDE so well as you demonstrate excellent work ethic through productivity and diligence. You are welcome to make brief remarks at this time. Our final recognition is the August Employee of the Month, Arthur Goss, Special Projects Officer in the Office of Federal Programs. Arthur, please join Dr. Dean and Dr. Wright at the front of the room. Arthur comes to work every day with a positive attitude. He has a very calm and patient demeanor and, above all, a servant's heart. Arthur is a vital part of the Federal Programs Office, and he works to schedule meetings, order supplies, support program office staff, grant management staff, and his most challenging job, keeping the executive director on track. He arrives to the office early to ensure staff have what is needed for meetings, trainings, or a regular work day. He is dependable and always willing to assist when or where is needed in federal programs or any other office across the agency, such as going out on monitoring visits or helping another office move furniture to a new location. Arthur understands every action, project, or monitoring visit is designed to ensure children, teachers, and families have what they need to be successful. He has embraced the mission and goals of the agency and understands the role of federal programs. Arthur, we appreciate your dedication to work as a team player and exemplifying excellence in your work. You are welcome to make remarks. Our board recognitions for the month.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations again. Now we'll move to the report of the state superintendent.
Yes, so I want to draw your attention to first to your board packet, but I want to start with this article. So I'm so sorry that Mr. Franklin is not here today. And so for those of you that don't think that our board meetings are live streamed, and that people are watching them, I'm here to tell you that according to Ed Week, that is not true. So there was a huge article here on many of the unknowns it says about K-12 spending. And it was talking about all of the information systems in all of the state departments of education around the nation and how everybody is struggling with antiquated systems. But when you turn to the last part of the article, Ms. Altman, you're quoted in here as well.
That always makes me nervous.
Yeah, exactly. Always makes you nervous when somebody says you're quoted, but here it is. And if you go to the back page,
Sometimes I forget we're live streamed.
that's exactly right. So Mr. Cramen is quoted in here as well. I thought his quote was very good. He said, "We built this system to answer A, B, and C, and now I'm answering D." So it made us feel a little bit better about this. But if you read on toward the left-hand side, you will see Ms. Altman's quote. You'll see Mr. Franklin's quote about this being a priority for us to really get our system into the next century where it belonged for a long time. But I thought it was amazing because the quotes that are in there are the exact quotes that my board members made at that meeting. So it's not just us that's having issues around information systems, and they quote a lot of the other departments around the nation. So I thought you'd appreciate that. And also in your folder, you will, take the time to read it. It's really a good read. You'll see this flyer. We are sponsoring the first ever literacy summit in the state of Mississippi. And so I got hats off to my team that has been working so diligently on this, and it has been a very cross-functional group. But this is going to be for 2 days, September 13 and 14. We've got some very big name keynote speakers, as you'll see at the bottom. I would encourage you, if you can come, we've got a day that we set aside for like teachers and principals and practitioners, and then we've got a day set aside for policymakers and community members, etc. So we've got some really fine people that are coming to speak, and I can tell you that Senator Tolleson is more than excited about this. He has asked for this summit probably for the past 3 to 4 years, I'm going to say. He's asked other people, and so now I said, why don't you just ask the department, and we'll take the lead on it. So we've taken the lead, and you'll see that this is really quite an exciting agenda. You've got your PowerPoints. Dr. Oakley has got an update for you, obviously at your request, around CTE. So the PowerPoint is there. We've also got a one-pager as you are being asked questions around what's the difference between an early college high school and a middle college program. So this is a one-pager that lets you know the difference. Exciting, I'll tell you about a meeting that I was just at yesterday or the day before. They have an early college high school in North Carolina, so I've already put the bug in Nathan's ear to find out about this, that these children start that school as 9th graders and complete their college degree by the time they graduate. So it's an amazing concept. I've never heard of it before, and I thought, well, let's see what that would look like. And it's designed to, guess what, produce teachers. They knew they needed teachers and to fill vacancies and teacher shortage, so they designed this whole program so that by the time these kids graduated, they would be able to go and teach right in North Carolina. So heads up on that. We're going to have more information coming on that. And also, you asked for an update on the education scholarship account. There is a PowerPoint there, a PowerPoint around our assessment results, and then another resource guide from the juvenile justice system, for your purview. So around what I wanted, I was at North Carolina sent a contingency to visit with us. They had people from higher ed there. They had invited their deans. We had almost all of our deans. Was it almost all of our deans, I want to say, Debbie? Or all of our deans? Okay. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. They came for 2 reasons. One, they wanted to know about our K-3 literacy initiative because North Carolina, they were commenting their scores are flat and dropping, and so ours are continuing to rise. So they wanted to know what are our strategies, so that was part of it. The other part was, which is the next part of our work here under Dr. Burson's leadership, we need to start looking at our educator prep programs because we've talked about the fact that a lot of our teachers are coming in not ready day one. So what do we need to be doing to revise those programs? North Carolina is looking at the exact same thing. So it was a group of about 18 to 20, I want to say, from North Carolina. There was 5 of my leadership here that went as well, and then we had deans and teachers from around the university. So we spent a day sharing what we're doing and sharing what they're doing. I also attended a meeting with the Woodward Hines Education Foundation. Mississippi is only one of 8 states in the nation that does not have a post-secondary goal, meaning we have no goal out there for when our children graduate. What percentage of our population do we want having achieved a 2-year, 4-year, or a certification beyond graduation? So 42 other states have already gone ahead and done that. I'm a firm believer that you set a goal for a reason. If you don't know what you're aiming at, you're never going to get there. So this was to start the discussion of what would a post-attainment goal look like for the state of Mississippi. So that keep your ears perked for that because we are going to be talking a lot more about that because I think it's important that we really start looking at what happens to our children once they graduate from us. I was on the Paul Gallo show again. Variety of topics as it always is, and so I'm sure that will be coming up again once our assessment accountability results come out. Nathan and Paula and I attended CCSSO's summer leadership convening. That's always it's a smaller group. It's just the chief state school officers and their deputies. And so that's a time for us to learn a lot more about what's happening in other parts of the nation. Chiefs for Change has its annual meeting as well. And last but not least, I was on a call yesterday with the Alaska Policy Forum and Alaska legislators. So they're asking the same questions that North Carolina was asking. What are you doing to get the results that you are achieving? And a lot of the senators and representatives were asking some very key questions because they're getting ready to try and draft a bill like our Literacy-Based Promotion Act. And they wanted to know what was being successful, what were our strategies, how were we employing them, if we had a choice now within the law, what would you absolutely make sure was in the law as they're starting to draft the law. So this makes probably 12, if not 13 states that have now contacted Mississippi to find out the good news that we're sharing. So that always makes you feel good when you're able to share. And I've said the same thing to everybody. This is all about children. This isn't about adults. So we're all in this together. We're all trying to make sure that all the children across each state are growing and going to be successful when they leave us. And so if we can share what's working for us and they can take it and make it theirs, by all means. We've said any of our resources are on our website. Pull them down, take Mississippi's name off of it, stick your state's name at the top, and if you can make it work in your state, then make it work, because this is all about the betterment of the nation. And so we feel really good about that, and it was a really good conversation. So, and that's my report. No, we don't. We're going to have the video on the Teach Mississippi, the campaign, but since there were only 4 members that were going to be here, 5, 6, we wanted everybody to be here so that everybody could see this. So we're going to hold it for September. So please make sure you come back, because we definitely want to make sure you come back and see that video. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move into my report. It'll just be brief. I apologize I was not able to make the meeting last month in July. I was away for work. The previous month, I had the honor really to be invited by the Aspen Institute to come and represent the state of Mississippi in a 30 or so folks discussion around a very broad topic, equity. Several days with folks from Kentucky, New Mexico, San Antonio. There's a smattering of people from all over the country, really. I always like going to events like that because it really challenges you and makes you think, what your point of view is and how that might be challenged by people who might not necessarily think that way. But it was very productive, I thought, and I kind of challenged them when I was there that let's just, let's come up with some actionable, executable steps, and it's going to lead into the subcommittee reports here in a little while. The takeaway that I had, particularly from the work's going on in Kentucky and Jobs for America, was this kind of growing trend, I would call it, across America, primarily. Like in Mississippi, a lot of pushback on too much testing for sure, and a push for civics and a push for computer science. But more broadly, this idea that your workforce development system is a key partner to your education and K-12 system, and that there are ways to. I don't like using the word blur the policy lines between it because that sounds sort of like it just happens. I mean, there's very formal policy that we can develop, is probably a better way to say that really puts the Department of Education and the 460,000 students who are participating in education and the 35,000 teachers to be at the table when it comes to workforce development through career and technical ed, through larger economic development opportunities, and through businesses in general through Mississippi, which is music to, I think, the public at large's ear. So a lot, I think, will develop as a result of that, and we've already started. I'll transition into the subcommittee meeting reports now, because we had a very exciting meeting yesterday with the career and technical workforce / career and technical education subcommittee. So I'll ask Mr. Suggs if you'll just do us a quick update on how that went.
Morning, everybody. You're correct. We had a really good meeting yesterday. Talked about a lot of meaty topics, and just like was mentioned earlier, I hope we're gonna show the presentation today, right? So I won't steal that thunder, but just know this: we've got momentum. I think that's the word that we're gonna start using on this, momentum, because there's a lot of energy there, a lot of passion to do something different, some breakthrough ideas. So I'll stop because I think you'll get a lot out of the PowerPoint coming up. Thanks.
Okay, and we also had the accountability subcommittee. Dr. Kelly's not here, so Ms. Altman, will you do the report?
We met this morning, and the School Performance and Accountability Subcommittee met, and Dr. Vanderford gave us a report on the academic assessment results, and they are very exciting. She's going to go through that later on, so nor will I steal her thunder, but it's exciting and good news to see what's happening, so we can look forward to that.
Okay, I think that's it for the subcommittee, so we'll move to the meat of the matter here, the discussion and approval of board items. Number one is an information. Dr. Oakley, if you'll come and join us, report of the career and technical education statewide efforts, which Mr. Suggs was alluding to.
Good morning. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Dean, Mr. Suggs, Mr. Bailey, for joining us this afternoon. I felt very good at the end of the day that we're moving in the right direction with this. Just from the conversation, no apology needed. We didn't make it through the presentation yesterday afternoon for the conversation, and I'm very good with that approach to a subcommittee meeting. It ought to be about the dialogue, and so we appreciate your willingness to come to the table and bring forward ideas. So as we walk through this content this morning, I want you to think about particularly the role, the vision, the mission of the department in the work that we do as we prepare students, not just for college, but particularly for workforce and to flourish as parents and citizens. And all of you as board members come to the table, whether you're students now or whether you work in education or manufacturing or the private sector, government sector, you've all got some vocation or some calling in your life that you work through every day to be a productive citizen. And so the work that we do in K-12 is not just about building content in students with English and math and science and social studies, and we'll hear about that later from Dr. Vanderford, but really to build that foundational content and to develop those students and to be in a position where they can step out into whatever's coming after high school. If that's directly into a community college program or technical program, if that's into post-secondary study or military service, an apprenticeship, whatever that looks like, the role of the department of that is critical. And this fits specifically into that second board goal that so often gets kind of tilted toward the side of college, but we've got to consider the career side of that. This is not a one or the other. This has really got to be an enmeshed system for our students. So within Mississippi right now, we have 93 districts. It's kind of an overview of where we are with career tech programs. We have 93 single district career centers and then 23 consortia where we got a single center that serves maybe a city and a county district in the same part of the state. Forest Scott County is one that comes to mind. I worked in that part of the state for a while. But there are 23 of those consortia centers in the state. And then we also have within those 93 districts 107 high schools that have programs such as career academies that are operating where they've got a specific focus on a particular content within those high school settings. So when we ask about the content, what does that look like? Well, our WIOA plan, our Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act plan, lays out job sectors into 4 quadrants of the state. This is all contained in our state WIOA plan that was developed a number of years back and was revised in 2018. And as you look at this state map, you'll notice that there are some overlap here. For instance, healthcare is a sector that's laid out as a priority in all 4 regions of the state. Manufacturing is in 2, advanced manufacturing is in another 2, so there's a manufacturing component going on statewide. And then you see other sectors that are isolated, more isolated to the state, like agribusiness is more prominent in the Delta, energy and chemicals more prominent in the southeast and coastal part of the state. This kind of data, though, is going to be important to us as we consider the future of career tech for Mississippi. In K-12 right now, in our CTE programs, particularly at the high school level, we have 16 career clusters. These are based on national recommendations, career tech recommendations. The bolded clusters that you see from ag to architecture, construction, health science, and IT, manufacturing, transportation, logistics, those are the career clusters that we know match up with these sectors in one or more parts of the state. So as we consider the future of career tech and these clusters that then feed into more specific content in post-secondary study, we need to be giving thought to what are the specific needs for your region or for the state and not just, well, we have all of these 16 available and we should offer every single one of them in every single school in the state. We need to be more deliberate and thoughtful in the approach to program review and application approval for us to really see benefit to the use of this information. So when we talk about workforce in the state, you can start with the outer circle and make your way in. I prefer to start with the inner circle and work my way out from a logic standpoint and use this kind of thought process. If we're going to create this viable pipeline of workers, if we're going to create a workforce and this ongoing support for the needs of the workforce in the state, then we're going to have to build stronger partnerships across state agencies with post-secondary institutions and with the industry and business sector. I think that business industry sector is a piece where, as we talked yesterday, the department's not always been in a great position to bring them in because we're the kind of the expected folks to come to the table and say, we want you to do this, but we're wanting to bring more voice from that business and industry sector to the table. And so we believe, Mr. Suggs, that we'll be able to lean on you to help with that. As we talked yesterday, we're excited that you bring that to the table. And we've got some other partners that have been involved in our Perkins work. So we're starting to strengthen those relationships, but we really want to be deliberate to ensure that what we're putting in place K-12 is aligning with the post-secondary, that they're recognizing those credentials for students and that they're meeting the needs of workforce. And if we're going to have the pipeline, we've got to build the partnerships and we've got to change ultimately the perception. Career Tech education is not the shop class or the VOTEC that was in place 30 years ago. It is significantly different now when you look at the technical skills, the computer skills, the math and science skills, and the reasoning skills that students need and that the workforce needs today. It is vastly different than it was when we were students. CTE and the connection to workforce doesn't just happen in high school. When we start at the top of this slide, career awareness really starts as early childhood. If you talk to Dr. Dent in our early childhood office and her team, if you look at the early learning standards and you look at the expectations for pre-K and kindergarten classrooms, you'll see some intentional play-based activities and some role play kinds of activities that happen in those classrooms. That's really to expose students as they move there through elementary school to a number of different career opportunities. Elementary students learn about their community helpers. They learn about firemen and doctors and teachers and policemen and other folks that work in their community. That exposes them to the world of work and to some different possibilities going forward. As they move into middle school, there's a lot of guidance that has to happen around careers for students, individual success plans and development of those as students consider the courses they take and the potential that has to impact their jobs and their livelihood after high school. And then as they move into 9th through 12th grade, the CTE courses and the college career readiness courses that students take, along with credentials that they can earn, work key certification that they can earn, provides foundational coursework that we would use to then build upon that with more authentic learning experiences for students through apprenticeship, internships, work-based learning experiences, project-based learning experiences for those students. So all of these kind of feed over time into that system that students are expected to enter once they exit high school. So how do we make this happen from a funding standpoint? And really the update today came out of the budget hearing in June, where there are some questions around CTE and what's going on there. ESA presentation that's coming shortly came out of that same conversation. We spend roughly $95 million in state and federal funds on career tech in the state that comes through the Department of Ed here, K-12 in Mississippi. Of that $81 million in state funds, roughly a third of that, 35%, actually goes to the Community College Board for support of post-secondary career tech programs. And so the remaining 65% is here in K-12, but of that, 81 million, 53% of it actually goes out to districts and is used to pay teacher salaries for individuals working in career tech programs. So a significant portion of this overall is tied up in staff to teach in these programs. Of the federal dollars, a significant portion of that, we'll dig more deeply into it in a few minutes, a significant portion of that actually goes out to community colleges as well. But of that federal money, we're only looking at 14 million there in federal dollars and 96 million roughly total in state and federal together, of the $2.6 billion that we have in state money for education K-12 in the state. So it's a small drop of the bucket. It's one of the reasons I believe if we're really going to have an impact here, we've got to look at the role that CTE plays as it fits into our overall state plan, and where we can. It's the reason we've structured career tech and secondary ed together. Dr. Amy Brown is within secondary ed in Wendy Clemens' shop here at the department. We've got to strengthen that connection and have creative policies and meaningful policies to ensure that the work we're doing across K-12 is impacting what's happening for students as they prepare for career.
Real quick, before you move to the Perkins 5, I want to pause and restate what you said, because to me, this is the big public policy challenge that we as a board have to drill down on and talk about as we move forward. $96 million funded from the federal government, which is 14 of that, and then 81 million from the state, so approximately that. But of the 81 million, a third of which goes out the door to community colleges, so just disregard that. We don't control it. It's directed, and that's in the law. Okay, fine. Of $2.6 billion, 96, well, that's just the state or the state and federal? That's state and federal.
$6 billion is state.
Oh, just state? Okay, well, let's keep the numbers the same then. So
Of the 81 then.
yeah, so really 66% of 81 million, whatever that number is, of 2.6 billion goes directly to career and technical education. And I'll just tell you, I mean, I said this last time, two meetings ago, and I said it in the subcommittee meeting yesterday, and I'll say it again. And as long as I'm still on this board, I'm going to talk about it probably every meeting. There is a huge public push for career technical ed, workforce development. Businesses want students that can come to them trained up and ready to go. I don't know what the percentage is. Let's say it's 80% of the public wants career and technical ed. And when you pay your taxes, you give them $1, 50% of that approximately goes to K-12. And 0.001% of the money that's directed by the legislature goes to what I think the public really desires. That is a massive disconnect. And as we move along and develop policy, that has to be addressed. It's shocking to me, that less than 1% of the money goes to career and technical ed specifically. And I know we have it embedded in, MAEP, and it's, there's an argument to be made. There's more than that, but it's stark to me, the disconnect between what the money is appropriated for and what the public demands. So I just wanted to, make that comment that, there is a big disconnect between the money and what we're actually doing with it.
And while we're talking on this money, I would lift up one other point around the money that goes to teacher salaries. Within a district, for teachers that are teaching career tech, in some cases it's a split on the salary. In a lot of cases, it's a 49% career tech funding, 50% MAAP funding, and 1% local funds to pay that teacher salary. There are a few programs that are a 40%, 59%, 1% split, where 40% comes from CTE and 59 MAAP and 1 local. But when the teacher pay raise passes, that has an impact on the overall amount of that budget that's got to pay for salary, because a significant portion of this appropriation goes to cover teacher salaries. So it is a small chunk of the overall education budget in the state. So we're going to drill down more specifically to the Perkins piece of this. There's the large CTE picture, and then there's the smaller Perkins component of this that we have to put into place for federal accountability. Wendy and Amy's team have been working with stakeholders across the state and with the RCU at Mississippi State on updates to our Perkins plan, or our submission for Perkins 5. And Perkins is important for a number of reasons. The federal government puts some funding into this and has accountability on this for a number of reasons. First of all, we know that there's an impact on grad rate when we look at students that participate in career tech programs. And nationwide, the career tech grad rate, students that are completers in a concentration of CTE courses, graduate at a rate of 93%.
Pardon me just a minute. You might explain what Perkins is.
Yeah, so
briefly.
Yep.
For
Perkins,
our two new people.
Very, very good. Thank you. Perkins is a federal law. So Carl Perkins money is money that comes from the federal government to support career technical education programs. All right. We have federal dollars that support students from poverty, or students that have an English language needs, or they're neglected or delinquent or homeless or have other special needs. Special education is one of those. So the federal government does supplement our state budget with money. Perkins money is the federal money that's used specifically for career technical education. All right? And y'all can stop me anytime you want to ask a question. I am completely good with that. So for our students that complete a career tech concentration, they graduate at a rate of about 93%. It's 10% higher, roughly than the national average. We also know there's a significant impact on economic growth and the tax revenue, and they've estimated this at the national level. If we had a 90% national graduation rate, there's expected to be a $5.7 billion increase in growth and an additional almost $700 million in tax revenue generated from that bump in grad rate nationwide. We also know there's an impact on in a negative sense for jobs that go unfilled, and that's calculated at roughly $14,000 per job for businesses that have jobs that are unfilled. And so this is there's a demand that we've got to support our students to prepare them, but there's also a larger social and economic factor at play here with regard to economic development. So Perkins, the tenets or kind of the guiding principles of Perkins focus on three areas. One of those is on program improvement, and so they're trying to, through the law, through this policy, federal law, trying to ensure that we've made commitments to specific programs of study, that we're assessing local programs and their needs to ensure that we are improving those and putting the ones in place that are going to align with labor market need. There's a focus on flexibility. There's some allowance to try to drive down into middle grades and provide more career exploration opportunities for students in those middle grades, to focus on career academies within high schools, to ensure that we've got integrated content as we move from secondary or high school into post-secondary, and to look at credentials that are going to be valued by the labor sector needs in the state. Students can earn silver certification on a work keys assessment that kind of shows I'm ready to move into the workforce, or I've got the skills I need to go to work at Toyota and get trained on the Toyota way, or go to work at Continental Tire in Clinton and get trained on the Continental way. But then there's also a requirement for data and accountability with federal law. Same as there is with the Every Student Succeeds Act. There's data we have to report to the federal government to show how we're using the money and what the results are that we're getting from that. And so from an accountability and data standpoint, Perkins requires performance targets for career tech centers. It requires stakeholder engagement in the planning and the rollout of these use of these Perkins dollars. It requires disaggregation of data. We got to break it down by student group or by particular career tech field when we report it. And then they want a measure of program quality. Like, how do we know that our career tech programs in DeSoto County or in Clinton or wherever we are of quality? And so that's one of the things that this Perkins Task Force has been struggling with over the last 6 to 8 months, as they've talked back and forth and wrestled with, well, how do we measure program quality? Is it a silver level certification that's a foundation for program quality, and then we stack industry credentials on top of that based on what the local needs are, or based on what the high demand, high wage jobs are in the state? But those are the three big tenets of Perkins. As I mentioned earlier, of those $14 million in Perkins funds that come to the state, 85% of that money goes out the door to post-secondary and secondary institutions. We keep very little of that here at the department. It's retained for state leadership activities, administration. There's a little bit of money that's used for corrections programs and recruitment of students into non-traditional programs. Maybe you're a young lady and you want to pursue a career in construction or advanced manufacturing that's not a traditionally female-heavy area. There's funding there to recruit students into other areas that they might not have traditionally considered. But of that money that rolls out to secondary and to post-secondary, roughly it's 47% that goes out to post-secondary community college programs, 53% that stays in secondary education. That's significantly out of line with the national averages. Nationally, roughly 63% stays in secondary and 37% goes to post-secondary when we look at other states in the country. And so as we work through this plan, we will be looking at those splits and what the funding needs are for career tech programs to ensure that we're trying to get that alignment in place to meet those labor market needs. So one piece of Perkins is this comprehensive needs assessment. As we talked yesterday with Subcommittee, we believe this is an area where we can strengthen what we're doing now, both in the application and the review of these. We don't believe it's going to come without some pain, but we believe we're doing it for the right reason. Local districts are required every 2 years to complete a local needs assessment. We need to ensure that these local programs are aligning with workforce data that we have. I know Dr. Wright is working with Hanover Research to try to look at a long-term labor market analysis for the needs of the state. We cannot just plan for what our needs are now. We've got to be giving thought to what our needs 20, 30 years down the road going to be. As we look at these local needs assessments and these local plan updates that districts complete each spring, we're looking at moving toward approval of those, wherein we're wanting them to look at student interest, student aptitude, and particularly the business and industry needs for their region of the state or for the state as a whole. If we've got, like healthcare is one that's populated, we talked about earlier, that's in all 4 regions of the state. If you're running a career tech program and you got a small number of students in it and there are no employment opportunities or career possibilities for those students coming through that program in your district, why are you continuing to operate it? If there's not a pathway forward for those students, we got a small number of students that exit a secondary career tech program and move into a similar program in post-secondary. I think it's 13%, Wendy, is that right? Is that what we said yesterday? So when we consider that, that's alarming. We ought to have a better connection between what that secondary career tech program study looks like and what those opportunities are going forward. And so part of that's got to happen through our program review. And the hard decision that we'll have to make here to say, you know, you may have offered this program for 30 years. There's not a real labor market for that program in your community. We need to look at transitioning that program into a different arena. So that's an area where we're going to have to take a stand as a department, and we'll certainly be leaning on you as a board to support us in that decision. So our timeline with Perkins, as we submit Perkins, this is one piece that will impact the larger work of career tech as a state. This is one chunk of it. Perkins plan, just like ESSA was not all that we do in K-12, Perkins is not all that we do in career technical education. Our advisory group, though, will meet again in September. We're planning to come forward to you in November with our plan for your consideration, and then we'll go back out for public feedback across the state. We talked yesterday about possibly hosting these rather than at community colleges and high schools across the state, possibly trying to find some business or industries that might host these meetings, wherein we might have a more attractive draw for business and industry sector to come out and join us for those meetings. And then have a larger conversation around career tech to help build that momentum that Mr. Suggs spoke about earlier. We will submit after those regional meetings and minor tweaks based on feedback potentially to the governor's office for review. There is no requirement that the governor approve our Perkins plan for submission, but there is statutory requirement that he have a period to review the plan, and then we'll come back to you as a board in March for final presentation and ultimately potential submission to U.S. Department of Ed of our Perkins plan. So while we've got this Perkins advisory group meeting right now that's been working on the planning, we also are looking at forming an advisory group to include industry and business sector reps to help advise secondary on those business and industry needs. We want them to come to the table and share that voice, and we believe we're in a good position now to try to make that happen. We also will continue to work with our subcommittee as we look at the activities conducted and the trainings conducted and the curricular review and other kinds of policy developments here as we try to clarify our career tech outcomes and meet our long-term state needs embedded within, over there to the left, our strategic plan goal 2. And then, as I shared earlier, ultimately considering industry need and other factors as we consider approval of career tech programs at the local level. And all of that ultimately, as we shared yesterday, has to tie back to where are the jobs now and where are jobs going to be in the future as we prepare our students to be productive citizens and to contribute to our state as a whole. So I'll be glad to pause for questions.
Outstanding job, by the way. It's nice in less than 24 hours you can hear all that feedback and incorporate it. That was pretty good. That's really good. No, really good presentation and teamwork. Just want to reemphasize to everyone that we think in the short term and intermediate term, partnership is going to be huge throughout the state with all of our businesses. And the one thing you didn't touch on, but I want to make sure everyone's clear on this, we also want to hear the student's voice on what their desires are, what's the ideal career for them, and match that to the map that he just mentioned, that map right there. We want to see, well, this is where the industry's at, but what does the students really want, and where do they want to go, and how do we match that? And you also touched on a very important point in forecasting. Over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years, where are the jobs? What are the power jobs that we need to get ready for? So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And one last thing that was mentioned yesterday, we also believe that branding is going to be very important. And how do we brand this message to get young folks energized to have a great career in the state of Mississippi? So more to come.
The branding piece is critical. I don't know how many of you listen to Super Talk, but there have been a series of ads that have run over the last year or so that are really targeting parents or students or other folks specifically to explore career tech education. Mississippi Construction Education Foundation has done a lot of work to help to promote that. And so we do need a larger campaign to support these workforce development activities.
I was thinking during the course of your presentation, part of this is going to be a large educational public relations type program. And something came across the other day that was about career and technical education that I can't remember exactly, but CTE is not less or not, it had something to do with less. Anyway, that indicated because you're in CTE doesn't mean you're getting less of an education. I mean, it's no longer making a shoe shine kid, so that, that's the concept people have of some of these. So it's going to be a big educational process.
It's one of the reasons Career Tech is one of the endorsements you can add on to that's greater than a high school diploma. A lot of groundwork's been done on this in recent years.
I do think we're at the beginning of a paradigm shift on this issue. And to your point, I think of computer science and coding, as kind of career and technical education. And, when you think about the portability of skills across different sectors and how that looks, I mean, it's fundamentally different than, we called it shop, when I was in school, but it is definitely different. The other comment I'll make, and we'll move on unless somebody got other comments or questions, and boy, this is one that's really, really, really important, is ensuring as we move forward, we're not duplicating efforts. There are so many entities that are funded by the state and to a lesser degree by philanthropic activity that's working around this, whether it's the community colleges, InSpark, SWIB, Local Workforce Investment Board using WIOA money to fund targeted growth sector studies. And I know we're about to go through an election, and I think the State Workforce Investment Board will be a key component of the next administration, whoever it is, to really focus on workforce development and reinvigorate that. And I just want us to be at the table as a full member, but also recognizing, man, a lot of people are already working on this, and we just need to compare notes so that we don't do this and then they do that, and it's the same thing but different. So we'll just keep a close eye on that as we move forward.
Well, I think the other thing too is whether or not you go into that career, you're learning life skills. So, I mean, you can, something that will help you in another career perhaps if you, it's just a good thing to know how to do a lot of these things, whether you use it as a profession or not.
Another thing it does put real world value to the education that they're receiving. There's nothing more motivational than to see the value in what you're about. And we all got our treasure chest. We don't have value in what we're doing. We don't pursue it, and so this puts real world value to their future, and they're much more apt to pursue it when they have the foresight to see that.
Questions or comments? Then we'll move on. That was an information presentation. Number 2, a report on the Equal Opportunity for Students with Special Needs Act.
And this item is actually also coming forward based on feedback from the June meeting. Just want to give you kind of an update on where we are, kind of information on the process that we're using for ESAs, some background on this prior to a policy coming forward to the board later this fall. So again, vision and mission of the board around ensuring that our students are successful, and ESA is one of the ways that we make that happen. As a matter of background, this is in your folder. The PowerPoint is in your folder. But the Equal Opportunity for Students with Special Needs Act, we affectionately call it ESA, not to be confused with ESSA or ESSA, because we love our acronyms. I think y'all both got acronym guides. Maybe if you didn't, we'll get you one. I think Ms. Amos has one for you that lay out all these acronyms we use in board meetings and everywhere else. It's more than you'd ever want to know. Exciting. ESAs, though, really provide an opportunity for students with disabilities to pursue a private school education or other opportunities through the withdrawal from public school and enrollment in those other activities. There is scholarship money to help defray those costs for parents that are interested in doing that. So from a financial standpoint, which is where this started in June, was a question around budget. You can see here we've had $1.2 million each year come over legislatively until the current fiscal year, where there was an additional $2 million bump in funding. But that $2 million additional on the bottom left from the 1.2 to 3.2 came through a separate bill at the end of the session that was funded through another agency. We don't know what the appropriation will look like for the upcoming fiscal year. But you can see a significant bump in the scholarships awarded for the current year from the past years. We have also used $1.8 million each year from department appropriated funds to supplement that money to create, over the last 4 years, $3 million in scholarship money, and for the current year, $5 million in scholarship money. On the right-hand side, you can see funds that lapsed each year that went unused. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move through the presentation. You can see those numbers have dropped each year, and obviously for 1920, we're just starting this fiscal year. We don't have those numbers and won't have those until a year from now.
Question. The scholarships awarded, do we have any concept if those are?
So from year to year, I can't tell you how many of those have continued from year to year offhand. There are a number of those, obviously, that were awarded 1 year, that continued the next year, continued the next year, until they were no longer eligible. That's just that's total seats. Don't assume that every one of those is deduplicated from year to year. Good question. So what are the eligibility requirements? The scholarship opportunity is open to student residents of Mississippi who have had an active IEP in the last 5 years, who are not participating in either the dyslexia or the speech language scholarship program. Those are separate altogether. I cannot double dip and get an ESA and get the dyslexia scholarship, or get the speech language scholarship and get the ESA. I can only get one of those. And as a part of that application, parents acknowledge that their students are no longer entitled to a free appropriate public education when they are participating in this ESA. They're not entitled to what their IEP would provide through the public school necessarily as a part of participation in this. Applicants are awarded on a first come, first served basis. This is something we did revisit back in the summer as we met with legislators and met with legal and talked with Pete Smith in our legislative office. There is language in the law that establishes an enrollment limit, okay? And so there's language in there that says that these scholarships are awarded first come, first served until the limit is reached, or until 50% of the limit is reached specifically. Just because there are seats allowed under the law does not mean there's funding to pay for all of those. So as we look specifically at that lottery provision, it mentions until participation reaches 50%, students shall be approved on first come, first served basis, on a rolling basis. That is where we have moved to ensure that we are following the letter of the law with these awards of scholarships. So in the law, it states that for that first year, it was 500 scholarships that were available, and then it allows for an increase of 500 a year. You can see it in the middle column. So for 1920, we have a potential, the legislature would allow up to 2,500 scholarships. We can do first come, first serve for up to 50% of that, or 1,250. We do not have funding for 1,250 scholarships. We cannot award scholarships beyond the funding we have available. So that's the note at the bottom. Allowed enrollment does not guarantee funded seats. That's based on actual appropriation. So as we look at the submission requirements, how do parents apply for the scholarship? There's an application they complete, and then there's other information they have to provide. driver's license, birth certificate, residency verification, IEP, as well as eligibility or evaluation if it's more recent. And then they've got to complete that responsibilities form that outlines what they will do as parents. Once that information comes into the department, those applications are time and date stamped. They're assigned a control number, plugged into a database, and then reviewed to ensure that all requirements are there, that they're eligible, and then we reach back out to parents to notify of whether they've got everything in place or not, if they're missing data points or missing pieces of information within that application. Once students are determined to be eligible and awarded, they're issued an award packet that it includes a form where they can sign for acceptance of the scholarship. That's got to be returned by the third Monday of September. Here's one of the things that came out of the conversation in the spring to try to address the lapsed funds. Was this award on a rolling basis and a withdrawal of scholarships or cancellation of scholarships for scholarships that go unused. We have a large number of families that may apply, receive, and then either not find a private school to participate in or just not request the funds. And that money goes unused and ultimately lapses back to the state. And those are dollars that could have been used by other families that are waiting to receive a scholarship. So we're requiring that award packet form to come back to the department in September, as well as a signed letter of acceptance and enrollment from the school on letterhead and signed by the school administrator. We want to ensure that they have made progress, they're getting the supports they need for use of those funds. We do reimburse on a quarterly basis, and those forms are provided in the annual enrollment pack. If the reimbursement request is not made by December, we will be canceling those scholarships. They will have had a semester at that point in time, essentially, to start drawing on those funds. So we want to be in a position to say we've got this money that's gone unused. Nobody's requested it yet. Parents had an opportunity to use it. We're now going to award it to a different family so that somebody can benefit from this ESA.
I just want to make sure, because that to me was like one of the critical deficiencies, in previous policy, that we had money that rolled forward and we had really no mechanism in which we could identify those that aren't using the money. So that's new, that by December, if you're not, coming up with your part, because it's the ESA plus your part, then we can make that money available for kids starting in January or thereabouts.
We would look at folks that are on the
Okay.
on the wait list or that need to be in the lottery, depending on where we are.
And that wasn't there before, so we would have hundreds of thousands of dollars roll over into the next school year that could have been used the previous year because we didn't know. So we are now tracking that. Good.
Came from the conversation we had early in the summer. So this is strengthening some pieces that there's not been an adopted policy in place. The department had worked on a draft policy that didn't get deep into the weeds on some of these. It didn't come to the board for approval. So we're in a position now that we're trying to tie a bow on some of these things and get them established.
One other thing I want to comment, that anytime we run into one of these blips that we haven't expected, we go back across to the legislators that were responsible for this and say, what is your intent? If it's not spelled out in the law, what was the intent? So we want to make sure that we are following the law as they had intended, even though the law may be silent on that. So this is one of the things.
Perfect. And I don't want to dwell on it, but the December 1st, is that enough time to try to get the money to the waitlisted folks by January 1? And the follow-up would be, what if we made it November 1? Is that too onerous for folks?
So we feel like, given that it's a quarterly submission, right now this is a pencil paper process.
Quarterly.
There is not an electronic mechanism by which we can do this. I'll speak to that in a little bit. We've not tackled that challenge yet, and not very confident about what that's going to look like at this point, frankly. But we believe December 1 is a happy medium. It gives them almost a semester. It gets them to I've been invoiced by the school. I can get my documentation together. I can get it submitted. We're trying to send out notices to parents, reminders. Hey, we've emailed you, we've called you, we've mailed you. Get these things in, because we understand we also face flack from the field when we cancel a scholarship and a parent's upset that they lost their money. So it's a double-edged sword, and we believe December 1 puts us kind of on the happy medium, so to speak. Yeah. So again, these requests have to come in quarterly, or submitted quarterly. Parents provide original receipts and invoices for expenses. We also allow for a reimbursement direct to school, but we're asking those reimbursement requests to come from parents. We want to ensure that parents know what we are paying and that they can say, yes, I've received these services. If we get a direct bill from a school, we don't know what the school has billed the parent for separately. Did the parent end up paying an invoice and then we got a copy of it as well? So we're asking those invoices and reimbursement requests come directly from the parent to indicate where that reimbursement is going. Our preferred approach is to reimburse the parents directly. We believe that's cleaner from our end. Schools or parents would have to be registered as a vendor in Magic through PayMode. And we also will have to notify parents. If there are signatures missing, if there are invoices missing, we've got to have the documentation to stand firm that we can reimburse for those expenses. So there are instances, and we have dealt with this over the last several years, where we have more interest in the scholarship than we have available seats. And when that happens, we place those applicants on an application list. We're keeping those now. We had them running year to year. We've got them compiled into a wait list where they're in order of receipt. And then we let parents know that they are on that wait list for a scholarship. And then ultimately, we work until we reach that 50% enrollment to award scholarships in the order in which they were received. Parents do recertify each year of their intent for continued participation in the scholarship. So for this school year, they received those recertification forms this past April. If they don't return those, we phone call them, we email them, we send them a certified letter, and then ultimately we'll cancel them due to inactivity or lack of response in some cases. So if you are if you're an eligible student in 18-19, you received the scholarship, or you were using the funds, and you remained eligible, you still had your eval and your other documentation to provide, and your parents recertified you, you continue to get a scholarship this year. Yes, you continue to receive until such time as you finish high school or reach the age of 21, or no longer under had an active IP. So the legislature determines how much appropriation they're going to put into it. I can tell you that historically we have had a greater demand than there have been funds for the program.
Happen to know how great that is? Like how much? By how much? 400?
At this point. Sure. So how can I use this money as a parent? I can use the funds for tuition or fees for a private school. I can use it for textbooks, fees that might be associated with that, for that private education. I can use it to pay for tutoring or for online programs or courses, other educational services or therapies. I could even use it to pay for enrollment costs if I'm taking a dual credit or dual enrollment kind of program. There are some other associated expenses that are allowed under the law. There are instances where we do have to cancel a scholarship, and that happens often when we don't get reimbursement requests. If they're not drawing the money, we're not going to continue to award the scholarship and let it go unused. If a student enrolls in a public school, at that point they are no longer eligible and they come off of that scholarship eligibility list. If a student is being homeschooled in a home education program, they are not eligible to receive an ESA. Again, if they're participating in the dyslexia or the speech language scholarship, they're not eligible. If they complete high school or turn 21, they lose eligibility. Or if they don't have their verified 3-year eligibility, they don't have continued eligibility in the program. We faced a number of challenges, as I've kind of laid out over the course of the discussion this morning. Late submission of reimbursement requests, the submission of reimbursements that we need to come from parents rather than directly from schools. When we get a packet of reimbursement requests directly from a school that the parents have not seen, we don't know that the parents are aware of those charges. We don't know that the parents are aware of those claims against the parents' ESA. And so we've pushed back on some schools and sent them back to the schools, and we've heard frustration from schools that said, we're sending the invoices, and we're saying these got to come from the parents. The wait list, as we've tried to combine, as we've worked to combine that over the last few months, moving toward that first come first serve. Some clarity challenges within the statute, where we had some questions around a 30-degree radius and the out-of-state, in-state language that's there. Legislature clarified for us. Some questions around the authority of the department to provide oversight or accountability in these private schools, where in other statutes we specifically do not have that authority. Some challenges around just the constant churn that we've got with addresses as people move or relocate for job or for other purposes, and ensuring that their contact information stays current. Underutilization of funds and the lapse of funds because of that. And then just the documentation and the process that's required right now through this pencil paper manual process that we're having to manage through the state, through the department. And Robin Lamonis and Margaret Elmer and their team, and it's a small team right now. We are looking, we've got enough flexibility, we believe, in our budget to potentially bring another person into that office to help support this. That's certainly a challenge, and we need some additional manpower there to help manage this program efficiently. We are working, as I shared with you earlier, on bringing forward for your consideration a policy to govern this, as well as a guidance document that we believe will help to explain some things to parents and communities. We've already made some revisions to the application and trying to refine the disbursement procedures for scholarships, developing an FAQ document that will put some things into simple terms for communities to understand, parents to understand. And then we've talked previously with John Craman's team and OTSS. We've talked with some other states about the development of an online portal. We have interest in that. We were optimistic this would be something, as John's team has shared, Mr. Craman's team has shared the Mississippi Succeeds report card that was developed in-house. We were hopeful that we might be able to bounce off some other states and look at how we could develop an online portal for not just ESAs, but also the dyslexia scholarship and the speech language scholarship. But given the complexities of interaction with local parents, with Magic, with other uploads that have to happen and reimbursements that have to happen, we're not confident that we are in a position to be able to develop that and make all those interfaces happen. So we are continuing to explore that. But that's a challenge. That's a potential solution that we're still trying to work through. And then really within the program office, strengthening those procedures and the guidance that we're putting out, and to ensure that we've got an ongoing process for the award and cancellation of those on a rolling basis, to ensure that the money is getting out to students as efficiently as it possibly can. So I will stop there and take questions at this time.
Questions? That's definitely good, thorough information. Okay, not hearing any questions. Appreciate you. We'll move on to item 4. 3 was pulled. Information on the academic assessment program. Dr. Vanderford.
Dr. Oakley is preparing for the presentation. You do have a copy in your folder at your table. Following the board meeting, we will update the website with the backup material for this item. Materials last week, a confidential draft of the summary, so we'll make that available to the public following the board meeting. And just wanted to make a note that the gap analysis for the subgroup that's associated with this item will come to you. Along with our vision, one measure of the board's vision related to knowledge and skills for students to be successful in college and in the workforce, as stated in vision as well as the mission, is the measure of the assessments and accountability system. So today this report will be related to goals 1 and 2 of the board's strategic plan. We'll start out with some of the overall results, but math, as you know, is the Mississippi Academic Assessment Program, and it measures student progress annually. Assessments in grades 3 through 8 in English language, arts, and math, in grades 5 and 8, science, and then high school end of course in ELA math or Algebra 1, English 2, biology, and U.S. history. One thing that's different about the report that we're presenting this year is we have included biology and science as well as the U.S. history. So it's not only a report of just the ELA and math assessment results. So the first slide is related to a 4-year trend of the overall MAP results, and we are very pleased with the results that we're presenting to you today. I know you all looked at your packets, but on page 6 of the overall summary that was provided to you last week, it shows that we measure proficiency gains in 20 categories across all grades and subjects, and we're just thrilled to report that in 18 out of those 20 we are showing gains. We will talk a little bit about grade 6 ELA, where we saw a dip, as well as a very slight dip in English 2. The data that you have before you is different than the accountability data, and as we talk through this, we want to constantly remind ourselves, especially when we highlight some of the districts that are in the top 10 for each of these categories. This is for assessment results only, so the proficiency that you will see in the accountability results next month differs from the assessment results because there's a number of rules that are applied to the calculations of a school grade, such as the FAY, and the students that met FAY or did not meet FAY are in this presentation, and they will not be in the presentation next month. So overall proficiency for math and ELA increased from 2018 to 2019. All of our end of course assessments had an increase in the percent of students passing, and the average scale score for grade 7 mathematics, for Algebra 1, grades 5 and 8 science and biology are above the proficient or the level 4 cut score. The next 2 slides deal with sample sizes. I mean, since we test math and ELA in grades 3 through 8 and high school, you would expect those in counts to be higher. So in both of those categories, it's over 250,000 students. Then we see that in count drop when we look at science, because that's grades 5 and 8, and the biology end of course. And then with U.S. history being only tested in the high school, and typically in the 11th grade, that in count is slightly over 31,000 students. We'll look at the breakdown of the overall findings for math first. So mathematics showed gains in performance levels 4 and 5 across all grade levels. You'll see on some slides further in the presentation that the largest gain in performance levels 4 and 5 was in grade 3 by 5.4%, and the smallest gain we had in performance levels 4 and 5 in math was in grade 6 by 1.2%. Some of the key findings when we look at the students that of all the students tested that scored level 4 or higher in 2019, that was 47.4% compared to 43.9% in 2018. In 2018, we had 52 districts that had greater than 45% of all students scoring at level 4 or higher, and that has increased to 62 districts in 2019. When we look at all students that tested or that scored level 3 or higher in 2018, that was 74.3%, and we have an increase to 78.3% in 2019. When we consider our level 1 students, we want those numbers to decrease. So we were at 6.4% in 2018, and we're now at 5.4% in 2019. This next slide is a 4-year trend, and so what we want to see when we look at 4 years across the 5 performance categories, you'll see that in minimal and basic are in levels 1 and 2. We're moving downward, which we should be, and then we are seeing an increase across the passing, proficient, and advanced levels with levels 3, 4, and 5. I just want to highlight there in the advanced category over the 4 years, you'll see 4 years ago we were at 6.6% advanced, and we have more than doubled in that area to 15.5%. Looking at the next slide with Algebra 1, you see that we have decreases again in levels 1 and 2 and increases in 4 and 5. And that has nearly doubled in the advanced category from 5.6% 4 years ago to 9.6% this year. Highlighting the ELA results, we showed gains in performance levels 4 and 5 in grades 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. As I previously mentioned, we did not show gains in 6th grade ELA. The largest gain in levels 4 and 5 were in grade 5 by 6.9%. When we look at all the students tested that scored level 4 or higher, in 2018 we were at 39.8%. Now we're at 41.7% in 2019. In 2018 we have had 40 districts that had greater than 45% of all students scoring at level 4 or higher, and in 2019 we have 48 districts. A level 3 or higher, and when we look at all students tested in 2018, we were at 73.7%, and in 2019 at 75.5%. Looking at level 1, of course we want those numbers to go down as previously mentioned. So 2018 we had 7% of students that tested score at level 1, and we're down to 6.2 in 2019. The next slide, again, no need to just keep repeating, but we're seeing that levels 1 and 2 are decreasing, and pretty stable there with levels 3 and 4, but with the advanced we increased. Again, English 2, fairly stable across. We did have a slight dip of 0.7% in students scoring proficient or above in English 2. And as I mentioned, science is new to the summary that we provide. We have the 2018-19 science assessment. Just as a reminder, it's a new assessment. This is our year that we established the baseline data. Last month we talked about the standard setting moving from 4 to 5 performance levels. But again, this is a baseline, so when you look at the key findings on the next slide, we're not going to have a comparison. But overall, we were very pleased in the results of the new science assessment. We had 55.3% of all students tested that scored at a level 4 or higher. We have 81 districts that had greater than 45% of all students scoring at level 4 or higher. And then 78.6% when you pick up level 3, and we're at 9% of the students that scored at level 1. So again, this is just a baseline, but you could see the number of students that scored proficient or above. We had a little dip there in 8th grade. Our 5th grade science students and end of course biology outperformed the 8th graders a little bit. But again, overall, very pleased with the science results. This slide is just a comparison for grades 5 and 8 on the bar graph in blue compared to biology in the green, and this is across all 5 grade levels. Next, we'll move into U.S. history key findings. Looking at, and the thing to keep in mind about U.S. history, we're still on 4 performance levels with U.S. history. The U.S. history assessment will be a new assessment for this current school year. So in the fall, we'll roll out the new test, and then it'll have standard setting to follow in the summer. And to be consistent with all the other subjects, we'll move from the 4 performance levels to the 5 in history. But for now, this report is only at 4 levels. So 53.8% of the students scored at level 3 or higher, proficient or advanced in 2018 compared to the 55.5% in 2019. Last year we had 88 districts that had 45% of their students scoring level 3 or higher, have 87 this year. But we also see a decrease in the number of students performing at level 1. We're down from 23.8% last year to 21% in 2019. The next slide's a 4-year comparison of U.S. history. You can see, fairly stable, but we are having some increases there. Again, 4-year trend, seeing number of students performing at level 1 going down, and those that scoring level 4 increasing. The next several slides will just briefly present each one, but this is a comparison by grade level. The first, ELA and math are contained on the second slides, but you'll see here that upward trajectory of what we want to see in students scoring in levels 4 and 5 in both categories. So 3rd grade ELA and math. Same for 4th grade ELA and math, upward trajectory. 5th grade, same. It kind of seems so dainty to keep saying this, but it's exciting to say, or increase in ELA and math. So this next slide's grade 5 MAP results. Again, there's no comparison. You're seeing the difference on the right between 2019 because we have the 5 performance categories compared to the 4 in previous years. In 6th grade ELA, here's where we'll see the dip that we talked about in proficiency from 38% down to 33.6% this year. Grade 7.
A side note, this is the same cohort that we saw the dip in 5th grade and the same cohort we saw the dip in 4th grade. So this isn't like it's all of a sudden. This is a group that's been dipping every single year, not maintaining.
And for 3 consecutive years. All right, 7th grade, back to seeing an increase both in ELA and math. Same with 8th grade. And then you'll see the display of the 8th grade science results. The next slide's a representation of Algebra 1 and English 2. So you see there that English 2 had that very slight dip there in performance 2018 to 2019 comparison. Biology results. And U.S. history. So slight increases there, fairly consistent over the 4 years. So next we'll move into the top 10 and bottom 10 districts in each of the categories. So I want to pause on this slide and recognize some districts here. We had 3 districts that we'd like to recognize that were on the top 10 list of performance in all 4 subject areas. And that's the Boonville School District, the Ocean Springs School District, and the Petal School District. And then we have 5 districts that scored, that were on the top 10 list in 3 of the 4 subject areas. So we'd like to recognize those as well. And that's Clinton, Enterprise, Madison County, Oxford, and Union County. The next slide is the math. You'll see on the left the top 10 districts, and highlighted in green are districts that are in the top 10 for both ELA and math, and then highlighted in yellow is districts that are scoring in the bottom, that are the bottom 10 districts in ELA and math. This is our ELA results. And then moving to science. This is our top 10 and bottom 10. And finally, U.S. history. And we'll just pause and answer any questions that you have.
That's amazing. That is a big deal. I know that was a lot of data for everybody to digest, but I mean, you don't have to be a statistician to see it's going up. Congratulations on that. Questions, comments?
Well, I think it's a visual application of the fact that teachers out there are doing a great job. I mean, they've bought in as well as administrators, but teachers are the ones who do it every day. And so they have bought into this and they're working hard, and it's just exciting to see. And I appreciate the work the department's done in pushing this to be able for us to have these good results. People ought to feel good about it.
Sometimes sounds like pablum, but it's not. I mean, kids live up to expectations. You raise the expectations, they respond, and that's a very clear indication of that. This was really big. So great work on that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. We'll ask Dr. Gavin to come aboard. We have a couple action items related to contracts.
Good morning. Yeah, we have two items coming before you for approval this morning as it relates to contracts. One is our monthly contracts with former state employees. We have one contract on 5A that we're seeking approval.
Backup material you have in front of you. Are there any questions on 5A, which is I think there's just one on there, the former state employees receiving retirement benefits? No questions? Then let's just take these one at a time. I need a motion to approve that contract.
Motion.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Dr. Elam, are you there? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can. Thank you.
We're going to have to start all over at the beginning if you weren't there. So I just need your vote on the 5A for the contract.
I approve.
Okay, item 5B is a contract with Brunstein and Manesovit this is for technical assistance as well as consulting services for the offices of federal programs and grants management.
One question I had was this, I looked, it was competitively bid. Did we have any respondents from Mississippi?
We did not.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve contract with Brunstein and Manesovit for approval.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Carries. Thank you. All right, we'll move to the consent agenda items. Under the consent agenda, do I have a motion to approve items A, B, C, D, and E?
Move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on any of that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Carries. All right. Okay, and we're pushing our time here. I think we got plenty of time. We are now going to move into executive session. Do I have a motion?
Move the board go into executive session.
Motion with the
I move the board to consider making a closed termination of need to go into executive session.
motion and a second. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Aye.
Great. the next one. Other business, the September board meeting will be held on September 12th, 2019 in Jackson, Mississippi, starting at 10 a.m.
Oh, buddy. Oh.
Oh,
All of a sudden, his daughter is looking at.
Okay, need a motion to adjourn. We might have an issue with attendance on the 12th meeting, so if we do, we'll make sure we notify the public if we need to move it. Okay, motion to adjourn. There's a motion?
Second.
Second.
No discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, Dr. Elam.
Thank you, Dr. Elam. Enjoy your.